Welcome to BYOD, the podcast where the guest defines the topic. As always, sponsored from NASA, not another stand-up app. The Jira app that makes your meeting fun and meaningful. So give it a try. Today, my guest is Kit Friend from Accenture. He's based in Brisbane, Australia, and I will have an amazing chat with him about teams, change, AI, diversity in teams, and Lego. Give it a try. You will definitely enjoy it. Have fun. So, welcome again. Today with me is Kit Friend from Accenture, Atlassian creator, podcaster, and on the other side of the world. So for me, it's early in the morning, and for you, it's afternoon and goes straight to evening. Hey, Kit, nice to have you. Thanks a lot for joining.
Lovely to be here. It does feel weird communicating over so much sea and land, but yeah, lovely to be in the same virtual space.
Perfect. So we had a lot of technical issues to do this podcast. So yesterday I failed with an internet connection, was fighting with my smart home, and totally forgot my phone that I can message you via phone. Today we struggled with Riverside, but we managed to have now the session. So let's start a little bit with you. Um, I think I saw you at Team for these Atlassian Champion stuff and so on, and I think you got also an award, or was it
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I did. And in fact, I can see it from where I am, but I'm plugged into some headphones, so I won't move things. But yeah, I got a Global Changemaker of the Year award, which was awesome. And yeah, the Atlassian community is a special group of people for anyone that doesn't know it. So it meant double because of that. Yeah.
Cool. So, for what was the award? What have you done different as all the other champions, creators, and so on? So, what is your superpower?
So it's a really interesting one because I was like, oh, that kind of sounds like me, but I wonder what they mean with things. And the definition of the award, I haven't gone back to check what it was last year to spoil things, but it's very much about using the tools as part of making change and doing things there. So I am a massive geek, as a number of us in the space are, and it's a weird place to be active if you're not a bit of a geek. And really, it's about using the tools to help activate our communities. So I'm really, really fortunate that in Australia and New Zealand, we've got a whole bunch of amazing community leads now, champions. Um, I guess I like to geek out with them and use the tools to help us organize and create, hopefully, vaguely interesting, amusing, chaotic events to help our communities grow.
So, what was so using the tools and integrating it in change processes? I mean, also the Atlassian tools have at the moment big change processes, so everybody is still struggling with a beautiful new UI. I like it, but I'm still searching for my stuff. Um, so, what was the content? What was your output? Was it writing community articles, how to handle specific things? Was it podcast? Um, where can people see what you're doing or
So
read?
you have to be in Brisbane is the interesting thing, right? So most of my community things are actually physical in person. So I guess it's
Oh,
kind of ironic, like in that um, I'm talking about tools that are about digital spaces and things, but um, I I think the area where we try and be most different is around the experiences we create. So our premier event that we run every year, we have a series called Agile in Wonderland that we run across. Well, we tried for 4 cities this year, but we made 3. So Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, Mianjin, where I am. And it's very much about creating a unique space for people to engage with the Atlassian tools. And I think that's what they reference when they think neat around things. So it's
nobody
not so
knows.
much.
So you don't
Yeah,
get an addendum, so that's why you got this one. Um, cool, perfect. Um, so what are you doing when you're not getting awards? So what is your day-to-day life in Accenture?
It's a really funny one. People often look at me and they're like, "What do you do?" And it's being someone with the job title consultant is a bit like that anyway, right? But specifically with me, I think people struggle to understand what I'd be doing day to day. So a lot of my time is spent on our Atlassian partnership team. And that sort of has two branches with things. So one is enabling my colleagues. So I just checked the numbers, and we've got 801,000 people in the company globally, which is pretty incredible. And it's my task in some things to like enable, inspire them to do awesome things with Atlassian tools. As you'll know, with your team, Bjorn, you can do some pretty awful things with tools to teams. And so I think helping make sure that we're doing good, not weird stuff, is part of that. And then I guess the other half is like the same for our clients. So making sure that the teams from my side can help support them doing awesome things. And it's never been a more like exciting and challenging time to do that, right? With all the stuff that we can make happen
Yeah,
in the cloud.
that's interesting. I mean, Accenture, I think everybody knows the name. A lot less people know exactly what they are doing. So it's something with consultancy. Um,
Yeah.
but 800,000 people. So, and you try to do change, you're focused on it, listening tools and so on. So how do you what is your plan on, also how execute a plan to get the 5 minutes, the 60 minutes, or a couple of hours internally from all the people, and how to focus, who is a stakeholder, who is a multiplier, who is potentially somebody where you shouldn't go in the first part with a new Atlassian tool and so on. So how do you manage it in these huge organizations? Because that sounds like a totally crazy task.
I think you have to be committed to not planning too much. It's the classic agile kind of dynamic, right? As like if you tried to break down how to spread anything like across 800,000 people, I'd really challenge, like regardless of what it is, for that to be effective. But especially when you've got a group that's very dispersed. And actually, I think it's why there's a lot of commonality between my work as a community person in Atlassian and generally and my role at Accenture, right? Because fundamentally it's about different people and getting them inspired to do something. And my role is a fail if people only do stuff when I'm there, right? If you as Bjorn, my teammate, are only talking about how great Jira is because you think I'm watching you, then my role doesn't work. So it's about building things where people take that initiative and are like, oh yeah, that would be quite fun. And I think part of that is being okay when it's you have to know which people to leave alone at least for a while. So I remember you got some colleagues, and it's like you clearly see they're suspicious of you saying something, and you have to know when to not push and be like, "It's okay, I'm here when you want something." At the end of things, so um, yeah, I think that's my answer around it. It's that element of community building, and actually, my thing that I'm most proud of us making within Accenture is something called Agile Geeks. So we've got a
Okay.
community internally, and like all large organizations, there's lots of departments and practices and things, and they change every now and again when you do stuff. And I think about 8 or 9 years ago, we had a bundle of our teams in the UK and our counterparts in Latvia, mainly based in Riga, and we did all sorts of really cool projects together, mainly at media clients in the UK. And after each one, I guess initially we didn't want to say goodbye. It was like we were going and doing different things, but we didn't want to lose touch. And so back in the day, and it was originally on HipChat, which for Atlassian people dates things as part of the cadence. We built this
Long
community
time
originally
ago.
called Jira Geeks. Yeah, a long time ago. I remember getting it was Stride, wasn't it, that they were going to replace for a while. I remember getting excited about that. And we built a community that was um sort of complementary but not related to our day jobs and our titles, basically to moan, encourage, like share things with each other. And I think that's probably been my proudest and most successful way of spreading that love, like through the organization and collaboration. And it's still not a community that I can tell what to do, right? It's still a group
Yeah.
of rebellious, interesting, niche people with odd ideas, but it's definitely the best way that I can think of to like build some sense of community and engagement around something.
I mean, that's always cool. In general, building a community to see it growing after time, but also building a community in an organization like Accenture, where you have a lot of influences, a lot of wins from the outside, so department changes, role changes, etc., and people then can still stick to community. Ah, that's really cool. HipChat, interesting. We're creating a new app at the moment, a user manager for cloud, and we figured out that Atlassian never cleaned up their APIs. So when we
Oh, I bet.
HipChat is still in the APIs, and it was really funny because we created a screen where you can see all available products, and there was HipChat and some other old stuff. So what's that? Okay.
It's still in there
Uh,
just in case they come back to the product now.
maybe, or it's one of our developers just said, it's always good never deleting something you don't know what you break. So, so um, you mentioned already Europe. You are based in Australia, so I worked globally. Sometimes I still work globally. I mean, also Resolution is a global marketplace vendor. And this is the most difficult time zone match you can always have. Yeah, so Europe and Australia is, for me, it's early in the morning. It's close to your free time in the evening. How do you manage? And you also said you're now growing into a global role. So I assume more time zones will come. Um, I saw a lot of people struggling with that, and I saw a lot of strange strategies from sleeping in complete different time zones to somehow make a match with that, and so on. So, what is your strategy to work globally with different people? How you handle it?
So I've been working asynchronously with the Scrum team or trying to start one up, and I think it's been a really interesting experience for that flexibility and needing to work across time zones. So it was originally suggested by one of the learning team I was working with, and my initial gut reaction as a agile coach, Scrum master, kind of keen bean was like, no, we failed all sorts of the key tenets that I would say you always have to have there, like dedicated team members, same time zone, and things. And I think
Yeah,
what was really interesting was like I was like, well, but also this would be a really interesting experience to see how good or bad it is with the tools that we've now got in 2025 around things. And I think for the most part, the actual work has been fine. So we're using a combination of Atlassian Cloud and especially Loom to collaborate. All of
mm,
our stand-ups are asynchronous and via Slack, and I was really keen to kind of go all in. So we originally debated, do we have like one of the Scrum meetings like synchronous and things? And I was like, no, if we're going to do this, let's do everything async and see how good or bad it is as an experiment. Um, and what I found really interesting was that all the work is fine, the actual kind of sprint meetings, but quite quickly I got really lonely. I was the only person in my time zone, and it was really interesting. What I really missed was like the side chat in the meetings and
yeah,
like establishing the private jokes and things. And it was interesting. We had like one team meeting, and out the back of that, we established 3 or 4 bits of shared humor around things that we liked, and then those became part of the work. And with the asynchronous stuff, it was just very effective, but it lacked that humans because you don't do it when there's not the other person there bouncing back immediately. Like I can't see when you giggle about something, and so
yeah,
I missed that. So we brought back in like virtual coffees for nothing else, no work chat, but just for the human connection alongside the
yeah.
asynchronous kind of meetings. And so I found that very interesting learning experience. I'm quite interested to do it with a couple more teams just to see whether that's a pattern, and it's the human bit that you miss, not the work happening in the meetings.
That's super interesting. So because I created a training in the beginning of the year, Agile Ceremonies for Impact, where direct focused on Scrum teams and on the meetings. Because what I saw mostly is that when the Agile mindset or framework, or name it however you want to name it, failed, it was mostly because the ceremonies were bad. So, and I analyzed this with tons of organization, talked to a lot of Scrum coaches, also saw it in our organization at Resolution, what is good, what is bad, and created the training because I checked a lot of other Agile trainings, and there was always one slide for a stand-up, one slide for a review, but nobody was really focusing how to do it good, how to do it interesting, also after 6 months or after 12 months, because this is a challenging part. The first two meetings are always good. That meeting number 24 is the interesting one. And in this training, I'm totally against asynchronous collaboration because, and that's the main reason, because I think the social part is missing, and the discussion is much more difficult on sending Loom videos to, hey, that's what I created this sprint, and then another person need to react. So you need to have people with really strong habits, with writing things down, giving feedback in a written format in Slack or in a Jira comment, a work item comment or whatever, is much harder as in a meeting. Hey, I don't like this button, or I don't like this result. Um, so how is you mentioned you're doing it with Loom videos and other tools. So how does a review look like? So somebody finished something. Is the person then recording a Loom video and you have a huge Slack thread, or all the comments in Jira? How does it look like?
Yeah, so we've got a workflow bot that does loads of nudges to people with partial adherence to things. And I think I should probably caveat my whole experience with saying I think you probably can't be a proper synchronized, maybe even co-located team for like tip top of effectiveness. But I think this is an interesting example in that there's all sorts of reasons why this team couldn't be that one, right? The mix of stakeholders just meant we were always going to be dispersed. And so I think it's about finding the least worst compromises in that context with things, given that we couldn't move it. Now, I encounter lots of organizations where they say they can't fix it, and I'm a bit suspicious of them. I'm always like, can
Yeah,
you really not slice your teams so that they're in the same time zone? And I think most of the time it's an excuse, like, or there's a, or they're focusing on the wrong blocker, I should say. Like, I think they think that their team structure is the blocker, and it's not. They need to pick something else. Now, I think with this one, what I've seen is I do agree with your point that it's all about the discipline of the team. Like you need to be really tight on things. The sort of patterns I've seen is like the Loom videos can be really, really good. And it's the classic sort of show me thing. It's that whole, even when you're in a meeting physically with people, and I've had so many meetings where you walk in, you all walk out, and you realize a day later you've all walked out with totally different takeaways from the meeting. And then my
yeah,
tip as an agile coach has always been to like visualize during the meeting and like that would be with like sticky notes and the whiteboard and the sketching by previously. I think it's actually quite interesting how close Loom is to as an example to like that experience because you're clicking through and showing things, and so it could be quite good for that. Um, I do think that the overall time spent is probably higher though than just having
mhm,
everyone co-located. I think people think that there's this magic with asynchronous where you're saving time overall, and I think that actually there's some goodness to the classic Scrum guidance of like 15 minutes a day, everyone being there, everyone looking at the same thing together, where actually that's very focused around things. Um, but it's
yeah.
important to have options, right? You've got to have the option to do these things.
It's interesting because this time saving stuff is also when I ask my team, or we switched 2 years ago to a 4-day work week, and we analyzed all our meeting patterns and said, okay, we need to optimize our meetings. Can't be that we have stand-up meetings 45 minutes. And it was mostly me talking with another person, and 5 people were bored to death in parallel because it was a one-to-one discussion. So we heavily worked on our meeting culture. And I saw it also in previous organizations where I worked for, that when you have a good structured meeting, then it's an amazing time saver. But it can be so quick that a meeting burns time,
Mm.
just because of the structure, how it's moderated, how's the preparation of everybody, and so on. So it's, um, but what I find still super interesting is that a lot of people accepting bad meetings, and I think that's the main pain point where people should stand up and say, "Hey guys, let's try it a little bit different because this meeting structure, whatever, is not working for us. Can we change X, Y, Z?" And that's what people. What I see more and more, it's people should do it. But this is such a hard part to stand up and say, "Okay, this meeting is BS. Yeah, so let's do something else." Interesting. So when Atlassian came up with Loom, so I knew Loom since many years. It came up initially with these amazing sales tool where you can send personalized videos in your cold emails to thousands of people with low effort. So that was their initial MVP, and they become more and more these. Um, I call it bad meeting replacement because it in the first pitch from Atlassian it was pitched as a meeting replacement and said, no, it's not a meeting replacement. It's a bad meeting replacement, or it's a Confluence page replacement, or it is a
Okay.
screenshot replacement, but not a good meeting replacement. So, um, what do you think will Loom change in the next couple of months? Let's say 12 to 18 months, because we see at the moment on Confluence pages a small Loom camera, and you click on it and you're still on the Loom platform. So yes, you can merge now accounts so that your license is now, the invoice is not coming from Loom anymore, it's coming from Atlassian. Okay, the invoice, perfect. But so far the integration is not exactly what we saw on Team 25 on slides and videos and so on. So what do you think? How will it look like in 12, 18 months?
Yeah, I think Loom is really interesting. When Atlassian initially bought Loom, I was very confused. I was like, what are they seeing there? And there's a lot of money around things, right? And then I'm slowly getting converted. I totally agree with you. I feel like there's a skunkworks release of Loom within Atlassian where it does a lot more than we see in the ecosystem externally. And I feel like we're seeing that play out in the marketing promises, but not quite in the product right now. And for me, what we're seeing in those videos and things at Team 25 is something that seamlessly takes what we talk about in a meeting or chat like this, and then puts it intelligently into, creates wiki content, creates Jira tickets and things. I feel like that's what's being promised, and hopefully what's in the pipeline around. And that's really exciting, right? The idea that we could do that, because I totally agree with you in that, like, good meetings or good human connection, maybe if we remove the word meeting, like this Thursday in Brisbane, we've got a big town hall for our office. Our office has a really amazing location culture here. I don't want to
Mm,
replace that with any tools, right? And that's a meeting, right? It's a meeting where we
yeah,
have a chat and we go to pub afterwards, but it's a meeting that has real value in the human connection. I don't want even an option to replace that around things there, but I definitely do want to replace like status update meetings where I'm turning up to go and talk to someone about like a pipeline figure or like how some work is moving around those things. And I feel like the marketing, especially at Team 25, I was like, oh yeah. And then I go into Loom and it doesn't quite work like that yet. But you can clearly see like the sort of touch points. It's like, it creates notes for me, but then I can't put them straight into Confluence quite yet. But I feel the promise is there. And like, I always find with the AI that it's stuff like the workflow integration that I find most exciting. Like, it's now
yeah,
really, really easy for me to drop in a Rovo agent prompt within a Jira workflow and get the agent to comment on a Jira ticket or something. It feels so tantalizingly close for Loom to be integrated with that kind of logical thing where I can go, hey, every time I meet with Björn, like, put those wiki notes in this Confluence area and then maybe create some to-do lists in Jira. And like, I think we're going to be there in like 6 to 12 months. It's not crazy technically away from where we are now.
yeah, yeah. Agree totally. So I think, yeah, we can see the future. I mean, we saw it on marketing slides and videos, how it should look like. So I'm hoping really for the implementation of all these integrations. Um, there was an interesting point. You are the first guest in the podcast and also the first person for a long time who said a good town hall meeting. And I will not replace it with a tool. All other people said so far, town halls, Loom is perfect for that. It's a perfect replacement because most
Oh,
of
it's
the
really
town
funny.
halls is one person is talking, whatever, a CEO, director, or whatever, state of the nation, the classic ones. Nobody is asking questions, and everybody is just waiting when it's over. So, um, what is different on your town hall meetings?
I think what's really interesting is probably what I define as the town hall. So this Thursday we will have our town hall in the Brisbane office, and the Accenture Brisbane office is maybe like 600 people or something. So
Yeah,
by our standards, it's small. By other company standards, it's really big around things. We'll get maybe 80 or so physically in person presence, and there will be like there's someone standing up at the front doing things. I think we have quite a high standards of what is entertainment and what's useful to have there. So I'm famously willing to tell people that more than 30 words on a slide is unacceptable, and you need an activity if you're bothering to get people together. And
yeah,
I wouldn't say that we've nailed that precisely, although I think that's still a good standard to set. But I would count the more important bit of the town hall being the 3 hours after that, where we go and meet somewhere physical, maybe have some beverages of whatever kind of people want with things, and it's those human bits of interaction. And I find it really funny. Like, where I work in Brisbane, I'm 25-minute cycle ride from my house, and I work in the Accenture office 4 days a week. And the reason for that is not because I'm working with the people that I bump into the office. It's just the ability to bump into other humans in the kitchen and have a
Yeah.
chat and discover those serendipitous things. And I always think of the discussion around how they designed the Disney Pixar offices around the toilets, and the whole idea was they put the toilets in the middle, so it forced you to bump into people and explore things. And I'm like, I want meeting culture that encourages me to bump into people and someone to go,
Yeah.
"Hey, have you spoken to Björn? He's building this really cool app." And I go, "No." And I feel like that's the critical part of like a town hall style thing for me. The hour at the beginning where we have someone talk at us, you can replace that, but you can't replace that serendipity afterwards. And that's what I love about my office culture at Accenture Brisbane.
So I was not aware of this Pixar office design. I mean, I know the situation always as a classic coffee machine talk,
Mm.
but
It's
designing
specifically the
person.
toilet, so you can fact check me on it. And I believe it was Steve Jobs, although it's a good one to check. It's one of those ones where I almost don't want to fact check it because it's too good a story from a design perspective. But before Accenture, my training is art and design, so I'm always up for a role of good design and part of things. But it was specifically the toilets, not the coffee machine, because it was like that forcing element where you bumped into other people. And I can actually relate. So there was I studied at St Martin's, the art college in London, and there was
Yeah.
one other person who we seemed to have synchronized bladders. Like we'd always end up outside the toilets at the same points of the day, and it was awkward at first, and then became funny, and it became like a really weird. Good cadence. You'd be like, "Oh, how are you?" Like around things, and it was just that sort of meeting point around things. But so yeah, big fan of toilet architecture as a way to force together offices.
It remembers me totally off topic. It was over. We have 2025, and then it was, oh shit, I'm old. 22 years ago on a music festival, on a huge heavy metal festival in Europe. On the central showering place, somebody put a sign: "Showering is not heavy metal." And you saw all the people with their towel and their shower gear and so on walking to the shower, and they saw the sign. No, that's right. And then they turned. And this went up to a big meeting point because a lot of people crowded there because they want to see all the people who are going to the shower with a towel and then break. So,
It's the amenities. Yeah, it's like town
yeah,
planning,
yeah.
isn't it? It's like where do you put these amenities and what effect does that have on you as people is really fascinating.
Okay, that's amazing. So means the first takeaway of the podcast is create communities close to showers or toilets.
Yes, those are our key thing. This is a podcast about plumbing now. We're going to pivot away from Atlassian and tools of work. It's all about where you place the toilets. Yeah.
Perfect. Um, so besides all the talks next to restrooms, showers, and so on, let's come a little bit to a point how you organize meetings. I mean, we heard already you have this experiment with the asynchron collaboration. You use Loom. It needs a lot of discipline. So when we come to your habits, your personal habits, so are you a person who preparing meetings, or are you more the person jumping into the topic, try to understand the first 2 minutes, what's the topic here, and then you talk answer to questions and so on. So are you more preparation person?
I think I'm really bad at preparation until I look at like some of the ways that I work and I wonder whether I'm right. So just the fact like the reason why I got into Atlassian and Jira and things is because it builds kind of constant preparation around things. Like
Yeah.
if you use a tool like Jira to manage your work or Trello or anything else around things, I feel like you're almost ready to go the whole time. And I remember talking to one of my colleagues, friends, ex-peers in the UK, John Pockroy, and when COVID started, I was messaging him and going like, "How's it going? Like, have you noticed any challenges in the way your teams are working now that we're all trying to be asynchronous?" And he said like, no change, no problem. We were already running effective meetings. Moving into this weird new world was like so easy to do, and I feel like a lot of the things that we codify in agile ways of working practices and things just help you have that constant sense of like any point where you have that snapshot moment, everything's kind of ready to go. And it's a little bit like some of my objection to, I don't think it's what SAFe says to do, but I think where a lot of organizations up with frameworks like SAFe is they end up creating this massive preparation load to get ready for an event like PI planning, which is not what
Yeah.
SAFe says to do, but it's how humans typically react to like that guidance around things. And I feel like when you see things go well, it should be because that's just like a natural snapshot. You go like, Björn, what's your next 3 month roadmap? And you don't have to prep. You just go, oh, it's here. It's here. And I feel like that habit building, like you're referencing, is really important to that. So I don't prep for meetings very well at all, but I feel like I'm constantly doing things like curating my knowledge in Confluence, building
Yeah.
things on boards and other things. And that means when someone asks me like, oh, how's the learning strategy going? My answer is always to flip up Jira and look at the board. It's not to say, hang on a second, give me 12 hours and I'll put together a slide deck to tell you about like where we're going with things. And
But this is,
but
yeah, let me jump into this point because that's an interesting one. Because also this habit is super difficult to develop. Yeah. So when I look in most of the work items in Jira or in other tools or Confluence pages, let's stay with work items. There is a summary. The summary is 10 kilometers or miles long because nobody fills in the description. It's maybe in the right status and has maybe a label or whatever. So means um, I had this learning many, many years ago, but I also failing from time to time with that. I had a amazing getting things done training. Oh, well, also more than 10 years ago, where the first task was there was a 3-day training, and the trainer said, okay, first task just today is writing all the things down, what's in your mind, in your head. So, private, business, whatever, all the tasks, all the books, what you want to read, all the movies you want to watch, all the um, travel locations, write everything down. And the effect was amazing because when I finished after a couple of hours, I had 300 things on a list. Uh, it felt like, okay, now it's gone. It's not on my shoulders anymore. So, and now I can think about stuff. And then I worked 1 year in these getting things done methodology, which is super hard because you need to write things down, you need to proper describe it, you need to sort it, and so on. And I always need to restart still today. So I have when I have 2, 3 busy weeks, then my Jira issues looking awful. When I have some normal good weeks, then my stuff is better documented. What is how do you manage this to have this in real time maintained? So are you taking specific slots during the day to maintaining the stuff, and how do you manage this, especially in stressful times where you don't have the time to maintain this stuff?
yeah, so I think I'm an aggressive oversharer, which helps. And I should carry it, but we're making this out like I'm always doing this. I think there is a reality mixed around things there. But on a good day, let's talk about being on a good day with things.
Yeah.
I like to think I have more good days than bad around it. Um, I find that like working live in stuff is like the secret sauce. That I think there's inherently this reluctance in humans, especially in large corporate contexts, to sort of share imperfect things. And I've noticed a really good transition where myself and colleagues just get comfortable with like going, this is the rough version, it's live, let's work on it together around things. And we'll come on to AI in a second because I think AI really lives or dies of this kind of point around stuff. So I've noticed like Fabio, who's one of my team, for example, when he's doing knowledge share like brown bag lunch kind of talks now, he presents
Yeah.
live from a Confluence page and he edits as he goes and does things. There's no slide deck. Like he's creating that knowledge as he shares it and iterating it where it goes with things. And then when he finishes, there's no ongoing work. It's just done, like or done enough
Mm.
around things. And I think getting to that point where you're just building it as you go is where we need to get people comfortable around doing things and shifting away from documents where it's about a 16 by 9 slide format around things and working out how it does stuff. And I feel like that's probably one of the most exciting areas of AI because there's been a whole pressure on someone to format things in a way that looks a certain way to get the knowledge around there. And like we are months away from that being like something that the agent does for you, right? Where all of that
Yeah.
kind of formatting and curation of things is not the important bit that we're needing the humans to do. And it's like the AI can present it maybe in multiple ways for whatever audience is at the end of things. There's a really amazing tool called Napkin.
You can do it
.ai.
already.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it already. I had these aha momentum 2 weeks ago, and it was not Atlassian Rovo, so sorry for that. I did a brainstorming with a colleague about a pitch of a new project. So, and we always use since a year roughly ChatGPT as an additional brainstorming partner. So means ChatGPT microphone is the whole time open, and it's document the stuff, and we're using it like, okay, now ask me 30 questions where we haven't thought about it or what we haven't discussed. This is already amazing. So that's the best prompt always: ask your large language model, ask me 30 questions about it, that you know everything. And on some point, we switched from ChatGPT to Claude because ChatGPT is nice for this conversation stuff and so on, but is at the moment not perfect with numbers, strategies, etc. There's Claude at the moment a little bit better. So we switched the whole conversation to Claude and said, okay, now structure it. And it came up with 2, 3 more ideas. We said, okay, we like it, we don't like it. And then the idea was finished. It was described also a little bit like a Confluence page. And then we just said, okay, and now create a pitch deck for it to the targeted person. We mentioned the targeted company, create a pitch deck for it. And after 2 minutes, I had an HTML page in a PowerPoint presentation stylish thing with the brand color of the company, with all the wordings, all the learnings, and so on. And it was possible to send it out. So, in many years ago, there was always this phrase, PowerPoint, an amazing tool where you can spend 8 hours to say something for 20 minutes. Yeah? So, this is, I totally agree with you. This is totally changing. So the format is changing, the preparation is changing. I don't know how many hours in my life I spent 5 minutes before my presentation started on fixing the last slides and so on. That's super interesting. But now is the big point here. What I see, and you're working in a big organization, is that you described your colleague Louis, is his name, or Louis, the colleague who
Fabio.
is creating the Confluence pages.
Oh yeah,
And
Fabio.
yeah, Fabio, sorry. Sorry, Fabio, not Louis. So these this is today outstanding. I think I don't see that 80% of the people in an organization having this behavior. So especially in your role now and building communities and driving change and so on. So what is your story to these people that they should try something new? Because in big organizations, changes has also this flavor of change is bad. Yeah. So when something works, why should we change it? Um, um, what is your story to them? Hey, try something new.
I don't think it's even just in big organizations, right? Humans don't like change. There's always that joke about asking the group, like, who wants to change? Who wants change? Everyone puts up their hand. Who wants to have the change done to them? No one puts up their hand around things, right? And I think it's probably referenced in a bunch of places, but I always think about Lisa Adkins has an amazing book called Coaching Agile Teams, which is like a Bible for loads of us in the industry. And she always talks about that dynamic of just being half a step ahead of the people you're trying to help. And it's like, I think that's really the key. It's not, especially with an area like AI, we don't know what it's going to be like in 12 or 18 months. And I'm deeply suspicious of anyone who introduces themselves as an expert in AI. There are actual bits of AI, and we had an example our community is seeing the other day where someone introduced themselves and they'd been doing neural network based pipeline analysis for like 10 years. And that is AI. We're mainly talking about this LLM, Gen AI, weird, fuzzy kind of like world of things when we say AI shorthand now. And I don't think you can be an expert in that. I think you can be an active experimenter. And I think that's the attitude you need to have is like, and whenever I speak to people who do that and they're starting to get role titles around it in corporates that I find interesting. So in the last 6 to 9 months, I've seen people who introduce themselves as the AI capability lead or the AI coach or AI manager. And I think what's interesting is like when you actually dig into those that are excited and I think genuinely in the role for the right reasons, you go in and they're basically people who like to tinker, they like to experiment, and then they're willing to share that and pass it on. Um, and not one of them that I've encountered says, and I always use Claude or I always use Rovo. They all use 5 or 6 things,
Yeah.
experiment, piece them together. And then the critical thing is, well, you can't ask a team of like 20,000 to do that. So they then filter that and go, okay, I played with these 7 different AIs, so you don't have to. Here's the enabler that I've built you around how to do that thing. And I think that the tech might change, and those people are the heaviest users of the AI, right? But that process by which we create something that can accelerate the others a little bit, give it, and then move on whilst we're still running, I think that's a trend that I hope will have longevity as an important way that we work with the technology, regardless of whether it's AI or something else.
I think it's an interesting point. I think what makes it in addition so challenging is that the cycles of change are so short at the moment. So it's and I remember a couple of years ago, or more years ago, there was the rule every 30 years there's a big invention. So it was TV, then it was internet. Um, and now we're talking about all these AI stuff. Yeah, AI exists since the 70s, but only for small groups and experts. And they experimented many years and always said, it's not really good. And then company OpenAI came with this ChatGPT thing, and it was immediately available for everybody um, who paid for it, the subscription. But when I look at the moment on how I consume the tool. So I have tons of subscriptions. So I'm using a little bit this tool here, a little bit another tool there. I started wipe coding. My developer don't like it so much because now I have a lot of questions. I also I also send pull requests and they need to review it. Oh my god, what's that here? Um, but I creating my own tools now for solving smaller problems where my CRM or my meeting manager or whatever doesn't have a solution. Um, so one of my theories is a little bit that this whole AI thing at the moment, when the people you described with they experimenting a lot and so on. So there is somehow a scissor opening. So that you have these I think early adapters, we are already a little bit late for that. A lot of people adopting it heavily, um, but you still you have more and more people who are people communities and so on who are a little bit against the whole stuff. So I mean, it's not difficult to understand on which side you are, but as you're working with customers as well, not just internal customers or colleagues and so on in Accenture. So, do you see it on customer side that they have somehow departments or strategies to implement this AI thing? Um, and teams need to adopt the idea first? And what kind of strategies do you see there?
It's a real challenge, right? And like organizations like humans have an inherent reaction to change, which is no, thank you, or no, maybe not the thank you around things, right? And
Yeah.
there are all the classics of industries where they struggle to do that, and you've got varieties. I think financial services are coming round and working out ways to implement things in acceptable ways. We've had chats recently. I was speaking with a peer outside Accenture about a really interesting breakfast he'd been to with loads of defense folk talking about AI and cybersecurity and how difficult it is to do that. And of course, the people attacking you have no problem using all these tools.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
the team defending against it is like, no, we can't like bring those things in. And I think the bit that I'm finding interesting is the areas where I think that they have all of the opportunity, but it's a challenge for them to think about bringing it in. And like schools, I think is the most interesting of those areas around things. So last Wednesday, I started to work with an organisation over here in the Sunshine Coast, and there's a school that runs an amazing thing called the DeLorean Project. I asked why it's called the DeLorean Project, and the guy who runs it was like, because Back to the Future is the best film ever, and everyone should be
Yeah.
forced to watch it, which I thought was a great kind of cool. But I went in, and it's like a mini MBA startup incubator for 16-year-olds where they go and create business ideas and do things there. Now, it's amazing. They're doing incredible things and this overall. But we sat down and they have like a Shark Tank round. This is interesting in itself because they do the Shark Tank 6 weeks into a 16-week project. So it's early enough that they can change, which is a really interesting lesson for us all. So it's not the judgment at the end. It's like a
Yeah.
shaping moment with things. But what I found really interesting was when the kids were presenting, they had really interesting ideas in the way that you like I always find it bizarre. It's always a surprise, but it really shouldn't be. Like when you give humans like an interesting problem space, more often than not, you get awesome things out. But they were presenting all these ideas, and some were a bit more plausible than others. But like that's what you get with a kind of mix of things. But what I found really interesting was they were leaving so much on the table when it came to things like market research and competitive analysis because they didn't have the vocabulary and the enablement to use something like
Yeah.
Perplexity to do stuff. And that's not their fault. It's not their teacher's fault. Because it's incredibly difficult to keep up with this stuff. And me, as someone working in a technology-based organization, like, in fact, it would be a waste of my time not to spend a proportion of my week experimenting and trying stuff out and doing things. But like a
I
typical
like
teacher, yeah.
that's an amazing sentence. Uh, okay, sorry for interrupting you, but I need to note it down. So sorry.
Hey, go for it. But like, say a typical high school teacher, even a really good teacher, where are they going to have the time to experiment with 6 AI tools to determine the one that they should enable their students in using to do that there, when they've got everything else on the table and that's not part of their organizational priorities? But if they don't do that, how are we preparing the 16-year-olds to be contributors and learning and active in organizations, right? So you've got this pincer of problems in that we're not
Yeah.
able to educate very well young people in how to take advantage of these tools. And so some will just do it because humans are incredible and they will experiment and do things off on their own. But you can't rely on that for equality and socio-economic progress and things. And then you've got these big organizations where they're a bit reluctant and scared and they've got valid concerns around things. And so there's two big chunks of our society that aren't able to really benefit from this value. And I think that's really interesting. And I think you have to attack both of those groups to enable them if
Yeah.
we're going to get the value out of things. Otherwise, everything we're going to do at the moment, it's all the low hanging fruit, whatever cliche you want to use, right? It's
Yeah.
yeah, you and me doing AI in our startup and making our slide decks made by a robot is not like the societal benefit, but the 16-year-old who's able to actually contextualize their amazing innovation idea and find out how to accelerate it, that's what really excites me around what we do.
That's that's a really good point. And I like your picture with the schools. I have a couple of friends who are also teacher, and I think personally they are, and they're also saying it. We are 10,000 miles away from where we should be at the moment. So it's because it's when you think about the whole education system. So we put kids into chairs in front of tables, reading books and learning a lot of stuff. Where today I wouldn't start to calculate a hard formula or whatever. Anyways, I just ask a tool. So it's I think it needs a fundamental change in education. I think I still believe people should read books and should understanding the concepts of stuff. Um, and but the whole education system should go, from my perspective, more in the direction: how can I structure my thoughts? So how can I ask the right questions? How can I what I see at the moment on myself? I read a study that, and in this study they said, okay, the whole LLM usage and so on is a little bit the downside because we are not using our brain anymore often enough to think about stuff, about complex things, etc. We are just asking. So, and I think that's right. But what I see personally on me is that I'm consuming a lot more stuff. So I'm reading so much more answers from large language models and requesting the answer. That's not right. I think that maybe I should prompt a little bit different, or I should ask another tool, or I should do my own research. But my content, what I'm consuming per day, has since a couple of months minimum a multiplier of 4 or 5. So, and this gives me a lot of new information, and I think handling these informations should be taught, because I'm still also not good in it. It's a little bit this buffer overflow scenario. But then let's. I think it's a really good point. So to come to the next part of the podcast. So, like every guest, you're always allowed to bring your own topic. So, and you picked diversity. So explain us why.
Yeah, I picked diversity and specifically neurodiversity as something I'm really keen to make a not forgotten part of how to make teams awesome in this heady AI related age of things. And actually, I think the topic we were just talking about really brings it to a head in things. In that, so the classic education model, people who can memorize the answers to 100 things and recall them in an exam win, right? Around
Yeah.
stuff. And those are the people that get brought out as success and get the A stars and things. But that accounts for such a narrow band of humanity that I feel we really leave opportunity on the table when that's the kind of people that we focus on. And there's an amazing book called Rebel Ideas by Matthew Said that a colleague Ruben recommended to me. And I always like it when you find people in your work who will reliably recommend you good books. And I listen to books now as part of my diversity as well. But I listened to this book and I was like, oh my God, how did I not think about this before? And they just talk about how organizations who don't have teams made up of different kinds of people are just terrible at creative problem solving. Like fundamentally, like when you've got a team of identical personalities and humans, and I mean
Yeah.
diversity in the broadest sense here, but anything where people look the same, have been from the same background, think the same, speak the same language, you just can't come up with like enough answers to these problems that we face amongst the messiness of reality now. And I love the concepts in that book for really exploring how we can challenge that. And specifically for me, I think the brain element of that is the most interesting. And there's bits of that that have names. So I have dyslexia, dyscalculia, amongst other things. You know, those are labels that get applied to certain bits of how my brain work around things there. But there's all sorts of other stuff that we don't have names from. And some of those you never notice, but it's because of where you grew up and the kind of people you hang out with. And that like wonderful messiness that you get in a team of diverse humans can't be beat for things there. And so
Yeah.
I think it's a really important part of us to build in when we're trying to create intentionality around systems of work and how we say, do this team thing well. And I think if the do the team thing well focuses on things like the way you run meetings and like the names of a framework you follow, those might be enablers, but I think the fundamental thing needs to be like, how do we make sure that we have the best possible set of brain cells, including maybe some AI ones, like looking at the
Yeah.
problems around things there. Yeah.
I mean, that's well, one interesting point on this is always where I try also encourage our teams is having to motivate them to starting a discussion. Yeah, so it's there are so many aspects in organizations. So you have hierarchies, you have roles, and so on. So there's somehow automatically seen that some people don't speak up, but they think that's totally shit what is presented here or explained, but they don't speak up. And I always try to motivate guys, please speak up. That's the most important part. I can be so wrong with my idea. I need your input and we need to have a discussion, because the only thing what I for sure know is when 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people discuss a topic, the result is always better as one person's doing it. And this fits perfect to your topic of having team members with different experience, different perspectives. This enrich these discussions more. So and you can work with these experience. Um, but how would you no, let me ask it a different question. Have you seen um, something what you or somebody where you were totally impressed and surprised? So of a team reaction or interaction in like collaboration environment where you were surprised and maybe left the virtual room or the real room and said, "Wow, that was something what I haven't expected."
Yeah, I had a really amusing version of it recently, and we've our partnership, our Atlassian partnership teams, undergone a refresh recently, and we've got a new leader in place called Billy Rowland. And my colleague Nick explained, he gave me his sort of profile summary after having met Billy like a few times, and he was like, "Yeah, he's ex-American Army and blah 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 blah." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds interesting." And I had a coffee, a virtual coffee with Billy, and I came away going like, "Wow, I feel so appreciated." Like he'd like asked me loads of questions about me. We'd spoken like very little about the work, and then Billy he came to visit Australia a few weeks later as part of us kind of spinning up the team, and he proceeded to do a presentation to the team about how human psychology was the core to good sales techniques and running a team. And it was like someone had given me the user manual to how they'd manipulated me into feeling good about things. But it was so positive, like, and it wasn't done nastily. He was just explaining, like, if you want people to effectively collaborate around these things, this is how humans react to stuff. And I was just reflecting back on our discussion, and it was like having a magician reveal the secrets to the sort of rabbit in the hat things. And I didn't feel negative about it, but it was just really interesting to see someone with like those tools at work and go like, yeah. And what I think was really interesting there was it was all about that building commonality and having finding things that you can like about each other and that ability to bond. And then the problem solving and the business challenges and things come secondary to it. But if you can get that alignment of the human brains and find the overlap zone where you'll understand each other, like that's the best. And that doesn't mean agreeing on everything, which I think is like a mistake that people often find. And when I think back to the Agile Geeks community that I mentioned at the beginning, when people ask for advice around building communities of practice is normally where it comes up in organizations. The first thing I always tell them is to find some people that will willingly argue continually about something, but in a sort of good-natured way. You want
Yeah,
that, like, and the classic one with Agile is something like story points, right? Like if you want to get a room of Agile coaches arguing, just like mention estimation or story points somewhere, and you'll quickly find out things. But it's that like kind of it's that lack of overlap in the Venn diagram, but a willingness to enjoy it and to sort of pull back and forth, where I think you
yeah.
can build that. What I loved about Billy or going through that interaction with Billy was that I think at the beginning we didn't agree about everything, and he used a phrase of he said something, and I was like, "Ugh, I'll have to sort of tell you that bit's wrong about stuff." And he used the phrase, "You're about to piss on my cereal, aren't you?" And I thought it was just that he was okay with it. He was okay with me breaking apart something that he'd presented around it, and then us moving forward together around something and having a bit of misalignment that we welcomed, and then knowing that, hey, rather than us being two circles totally overlapping, having some overlap and some bits where we would differ would be way better for us as a team when we go and find something next around stuff. And when I look at the teams where I've enjoyed working with over the years, they've all had an element of that. They've all had, or a lot of that, where we're like
Mhm.
quite different people. There'll be bits where we disagree. We'll do the storming, forming thing, and then we'll come out the end with something way more interesting than if we'd agreed with everything at the beginning and just kind of proceeded down that one path.
Do you have because it's interesting uh, um, to get all the power of a person, all the different habits, behaviors, and so on, because you have also aspects of in teams you have more extroverts. They very often are louder in the team, and this means the introverts more shut up and accept things. So, and that's one of the most difficult team dynamics to harmonize this. Do you have techniques for this, or do you love a specific technique to make sure that everybody in the team is heard?
I love Lego Serious Play. Have you used it before with your teams?
No.
So Lego Serious Play is my favorite thing for getting teams together. You'll love it because it's only physical and and there's not really a virtual equivalent with things. And so I arrived at Lego Serious Play because I used to, and still to a certain extent, I do quite a lot of teaching of Agile courses and then more Atlassian courses at Accenture. And we always used to, at the end of our Agile and Scrum foundational training in the UK, build a Lego island, and things would happen on the Lego island and you have to respond to them. But I had this nagging feeling that I was a bit of a fraud, and anyone listening who's a consultant may feel this problem themselves, where I was like, I think I'm doing something scientific with this Lego, but like, am I, or is it just that I've got a bunch of Lego? People like Lego with things. So one of the first things that I did when I changed from working at Accenture UK to Accenture Australia, I don't know why it took me moving halfway around the world to do this, but it did. I I worked with the team and we scheduled in Lego Serious Play facilitator training because I was like, I've heard of this thing. I think it's a thing we should do. And I love it. It's a really fascinating process or framework. There's a few fun bits of it. I'll very much praise the kind of introduction, and there's a really good free book that you can download from a gentleman called Michael Fern, who's a Lego Serious Play fanatic, I would call him, based in Australia, and he's released it free as an ebook. And it was developed initially for the Lego group and specifically for their C-suite, which I found really interesting. So
Yeah.
it's not for, or it wasn't originally for like a team to do a retro that was a bit fun. It was literally for their CEO and gang to go away for 3 days and like work out their 5-year strategy. And to cut a long story short, the Lego Group went through a bundle of changes, and as part of one of those, they open sourced it as a framework. So it's weirdly back to the world of software, and so Lego Serious Play is now open source. Like you can't not kind of be okay to do it around things, and like you could go forth after this podcast or webinar and then proclaim yourself a Lego Serious Play facilitator, and there's technically nothing anyone could do to stop you. It's open source around things. But the bit that I love is you go through these little loops, much like an agile team, where there's a question and you build an answer to the question, and then you
Yeah.
share it and you reflect. And what's really, really interesting with teams is, so you get a bundle of people in the room, and regardless of the organizational team, there'll be a mix of those character types around things. And I really love it when you've got a mixture of people who are classical introverts or extroverts around things. And what the Lego does is it takes what's inside their head and makes them externalize it. And because it's Lego and it's in front of them, it's an object, it doesn't actually matter that much whether the person's a confident speaker and doing things, because their
Yeah.
idea takes shape in front of them. And the time boxes are too short for you to be good at it. So it's not about building the Eiffel Tower. You've got like 3 minutes to build this thing. So you end up with these bizarre metaphors. And I remember one of my favorites, I did this with Easy Agile, who are another marketplace vendor in Atlassian. Someone
Yeah.
built like the pyramid of misaligned communication. And it was this blue pyramid with like things falling off it and stuff. Someone else had the whale of scope creep and things. So you end up with these weird visual metaphors and storytelling. And what happens when you have them in a group is like, you can see if someone's been left out of the conversation because their object is sat on the side of the table. And it means
Yeah.
the whole group has to go like, the duck, we haven't included the duck. Like, what do we do with the duck as part of things? And so it goes from the problem being one person not being confident expressing themselves to it being the team has to like integrate the whale of scope creep somehow. And what are you going to do
Yeah.
about that? And like, when you put these bricks together, how do you form those compromises? And it's the most bizarrely simple but powerful way of bringing people together around something I have seen in like my 15 years of working with different scale of organizations now. It's like a cheat card for humans. And it's this weird mixture of like a bit of the process and the magic of like a low fidelity medium like Lego, and short time boxes that sort of come together with this stuff. And so more than anything else in any tool, Lego Serious Play is my top pick for like a sort of cheat code for getting humans to collaborate on something.
I need to check it out. I have a planned team meeting in a couple of weeks, so that's maybe a nice task. Um, so let's come to another aspect here. What I have seen last Friday, the last time, um, experienced worker and young starter, young professionals, new generation. So you have, especially in Europe here, you have the huge discussion of Gen Z is joining more and more the work environment. The discussion started a couple of years ago, so companies tried to refresh themselves a little bit that they fit to Gen Z. And I heard last Friday in a meeting a story where somebody explained, yeah, there was a young woman. She did the job really well because she was so enthusiastic about the topic. So it was not about maybe her experience or her knowledge or whatever. It was the passion, uh, um, what she brought into the topic. And when the stuff was finished, I thought about it and said, I mean, that's cool to when somebody sees a passion from somebody. That is just because the person was much younger as yourself. Is it then the only highlight where people can shine? So the passion or whatever. Um, and I see a little bit an upcoming conflict because we are I don't know how old are you, but I'm in a generation, so I started without mobile phones. So means I saw the mobile phone invention, I saw the internet stuff coming up. We did a lot of stuff manual, and I see these automation wheels start rolling, and it's increasing and accelerating. And now I can see what I uh, can do with all the stuff, and I see the benefit. So when I talk to people who joining their work life later, um, they joining direct on these fast-paced train. So they haven't done this handmade stuff in the Stone Age. They are direct on the fast-paced train. They are in some cases much faster adopting things. So I'm always impressed how long I need nowadays to adopting specific things, and they just click, 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 click. So classic thing was I was not aware till a couple of months that there is a fast forward function in every video tool when you just press your finger on the smartphone. Um, so how do you see these? I come up with a theory that this will become a conflict because we have these baby boomer generations. They are going more and more out of the work. We have our generation, the often called as workaholics. And the passion about work, and yes, overtime and work hours, and we define very often with our profession. And we have a new generation who is focused a little bit less on profession, more on work-life balance, but it's also much faster with the technology nowadays. So I see an upcoming conflict. What is your view on it?
Yeah, so let's fix 4 generations of intergenerational work conflict in 15 minutes on a podcast, right? I do you know, I agree, and then I'm like, but is that always what people think? I feel like there's that tendency of, and I think we're probably in about the same age demographic, although you've been more fortunate with the male pattern ball genes than me. Um, with things, but I feel like every generation probably thinks that the next one's going to have problems around things, and in different cases, it's
Yes.
true.
Good
Housing
point.
market around things there, and then you're like, oh, and I remember I think the first time where I started to feel old was when Snapchat was starting to come out, and I opened the app and I just didn't understand the user experience. Like I was so hard coded to that expectation that, particularly with a social media app, you open it up and there's a feed and you click through and there's a certain visual language, and something that opened directly into like a camera taking. I was like, what? Where do I go next around this with things? And I think I've got faith in humanity that people find their way around those things. I think it's difficult for the generations to understand each other, but I feel like sometimes we have to like trust them to fix it and not worry about forming people into what our own mold of that success would look like with things.
Yeah.
And that's a challenging thing, right? Because it's like when you're working with teams, the most difficult thing is to trust the team and leave them alone. And you spoke about how your team, you will work 4 days a week. And I did after my second son, Owen, was born, I came back to Accenture 4 days a week, which was like, it wasn't that done at that point in time. And basically, I'd been out for 6 months, which was amazing.
Yeah.
And a big thing I'm always grateful for the organization for supporting. And I had a panic like 4 weeks before I came back, and I was like, I don't want to go back 5 days a week. I want to be like home with my son and
Yeah.
things. And the most difficult thing was not the organization being unwilling to support me or things. It was me trusting that the team would be okay on Fridays without me babysitting them. And just getting away from that, the feeling, especially as like I was like a scrum master, I was used to being like the person there driving the meetings and things. The team were fine.
Are you a micromanager?
I don't think so. Evidently, yes. Well, evidently I was. It was this feeling of anxiety. And do you know, but it wasn't even like I would babysit them the rest of the day. It was just
Yeah.
that feeling that I could see what was happening. And I think what's really interesting we see the post-COVID journey of workplaces and everyone being free, and then this sort of rescinding back to what we have now, where it's like the management are saying you must be in 3 days a week, and everyone asks why, and it's like, well, I need to see you around things.
Yeah.
And I feel like this intergenerational thing, there's a similar dynamic going on where it's like, well, maybe they're okay without having the standards that we're worried about people holding to. And, the the younger crowd, they don't drink as much. That's probably a great thing as well. There's all these standards that we had to do with like what we thought success looked like and a healthy working pattern and social things around. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, maybe they won't mimic those things, and that might be for the better in lots of ways and in lots of different ways.
That's a super
But I do
super
in Richtung
interesting
dir
point.
sei
I
so
mean,
top.
that's also yeah, yeah. No, that's I like this perspective because that's also what my feeling is that the generation I just put us now in one generation. The generation after us is more in the future looking perspective. They have a broader picture to think about, as I was doing in the last 20, 30, 40 years. My questions are very often about the here, the now, and not so much about that. I mean, also about how to act sustainable for future and so on. Yes, for sure, but it's not my major thought every day. Yeah. So and I think that's also a super interesting point that um I get a lot more questions about upcoming things. How will the future of an organization look like? The future of a product look like? A future of how people consume things look like? And at the same time, and that's I think the interesting constraint, it was never so difficult to forecast the next couple of months, years, and so on. A couple 10 years ago, it was relatively easy when you were in the information technology sector to forecast the next 2, 3 years. So a little bit more of this, computer will getting smaller, more power, this will lead to this, etc. This is nowadays not really possible anymore. Um, Interesting. I like the point with your 4 day week that you were afraid of the Friday thing, but it was also our our thought when we came up with a 4 day week. So we tried to implement it shortly before COVID started, and then we
Mm.
canceled it and said, okay, we can't do it during a pandemic because nobody could foresee how long it takes and so on. And we activated it shortly after COVID, and so many things happened where we haven't thought about it. Yes, so one trigger, and I remember to one colleague, he said, "Okay, developer," he said, "when I leave on Friday or shut down my MacBook, then I need to organize my groceries. I have family stuff. On Saturday, I need to clean the flat, the house, whatever. Then on Sunday, maybe I need to visit my parents. So I have other social responsibilities. And there is no time for me to come down to charge the batteries again. So, and he said, I'm starting stressed on a Monday in my job. And that's not good. And he wants to change this. And after we hired a person in addition when we implemented the 4 day week, she was just responsible for taking care of everybody. She was not reporting to us, was just for one-on-one meetings to somehow figure out how the stress level change, its pressure increasing or whatever. And after a while, people came up with all these amazing stories, what they're doing on their, we call the additional 3-day rest day, what they do on their rest day. And the most interesting point came from all the family people with kids at home. They said, "That's so amazing. Your kids are in kindergarten or school. Your wife, girlfriend, husband, etc., is also not at home. So you have time for yourself to
Mm.
do really stuff, to think about stuff, and so on." And that was for most of the team members the game changer, and also the big motivation to changing working behaviors to squeeze out these additional efficient, let's call it efficiency for a moment, or productivity, to squeeze it out. And that's still the motivation that everybody wants to keep it running. I also love it. Um, but it needs that everybody is on board and running in the same direction. And that's, I think, where it also needed a lot of preparation. So we prepared it nearly 6 months, and we are just a 30-person organization. I can't imagine how it would look like for Accenture doing it. So maybe same time frame, maybe a decade, we don't know. Let's come to the last part of the podcast. So I asked you 3 questions
Oh yeah.
in our app. So it's a classic 0612. So let me share quickly my screen. Then we have it visual for all the people who are watching the video version of the podcast. So my first question is always, what was an interesting challenge where you couldn't find an existing playbook to achieve something, to reach your goals, whatever? And your answer is how to deploy Atlassian teamwork foundation and system of work. I mean, for all people who are not so familiar with the Atlassian wordings and so on, these are packages or new introduced packages and strategies, how to use the different Atlassian apps in combination to get the complete power. But also it changes. Oh, there are a lot of recommendations how to change your work behaviors, how you should do things, and so on. So tell us a little bit more, because the comment was also, yeah, making it real from slides to reality a little bit. So what's the story behind this?
Yeah, and I think the clue is like when you did your explanation and it sort of trails off as you try and explain what it is to people, right? And it's like
Yeah,
they're very potentially broad topics and things because they're about like advice on how to work. And it's like, well, what do you mean how to work? And it's like, it could be that. Like it becomes this like very open-ended kind of set of things, even though there are strong like the Agile Manifesto, there's good, core, strong things that you can point at, but then as soon as you unpack them, you end up very open-ended. So I think that's a challenge, and I wouldn't say it's a challenge I faced and fixed around things, but it's something I'm tackling at the moment with things. And I think the bit that I found interesting around it is like it's just so logical to now face that challenge between human and AI working together. Um, and so like that's what I'm in the middle of at the moment is mixing those two things to try and tackle this
yeah.
problem set.
The the interesting things with the interaction, I mean, that's also one of the Atlassian stories, is making AI to your teammate. Yeah. So take robo agents, give them some system prompts, and then they can you can hand over specific tasks. I'm doing this since a while. I have on Wednesday a meeting with my team to explain a couple of my workflows, because I'm created, for example, a workflow who's cleaning up my email inbox every morning automatically, putting all away the 10,000 onboarding mails for my subscriptions, classifying already the priorities, and gives me a nice summary which I can easily consume when I have my first coffee. Um, so things like this, to having additional virtual colleagues. The interesting point is here, I think, um, when we look on other industries, well, in this information technology industry and everything what is around the consultancy and so on. So we always saw automations a little bit more. Yeah, there was a email, then there was spam, then there was automatic spam filter, so and then it was productive again. And you have a lot of these stories. Um, the interesting point I really see on complete different industries. So with these, I see a huge increase of acceleration in the whole industry part of automotive machines and so on. They always worked with robotic. So for them, it's relatively normal to have colleagues who are not human.
Mm.
But also this changes now a lot because they get more robots. Um, what are your thoughts on who will be which vertical is has the highest potential for improvements of all these human AI system of work interaction? So it's a good question.
That's a
So,
great question. I think looking back to our earlier discussion, so like I think it's not going to be the one that people expect or want, right? Because it's like the classic when you go into a large organization and you're asked to help out a program, and they always pick like the most difficult one, dealing with some like legacy ERP kind of thing. They're like, fix this program, and you're like, that's not the right one to fix. It's kind of area
yeah.
there with things. So I don't think it's going to be like financial services or government or things there. I'd like it to be like the schools or some of the areas where we spoke about before, because I think it's one of the areas where there's the least actual blockers if you just like catalyze them, and they have the biggest kind of outcome. And it's like so the session I was at last Wednesday, we were coaching 8 teams of 16-year-olds in my kind of room. Each of
Yeah.
them had 3 to 5 kind of teenagers. If we got those people using AI, just think of the multipliers over the next decade of the people that they would impact positively around things. And so I think a little bit of effort in those, they will take it and run with it. And I think that's both my most hopeful and the area where I think that we will start to see the acceleration happening. And then I think they'll probably leave the generations that we were talking about in the dust. They'll get a little bit empowered, and then they'll be going, Bjorn, this is how you click fast forward, and you'll be what? So
Uh,
I think that'll be where we see it accelerate most. Yeah.
that's really cool. I think uh, from my perspective, I had a couple of conversations with startups on an exhibition last year, and I was totally surprised about all the medical AI startups. So these
Mm.
classic doctor on your phone apps and so on. And I haven't understood most of their use, or I haven't asked in the beginning. I thought, okay, doctor on the phone, why should I use it? But hey, I'm living also in the middle of Europe with a healthcare system, with a health insurance, and so on. I don't need to pay extra for visiting a doctor, etc. And then I started a couple of conversations with these startups, and they mostly focused on countries where you don't have access to medical advice. And that was so interesting. I never thought about this, that when a person somewhere in the middle of nowhere, where it needs 2 days to see the next doctor and they potentially can't afford the travel or the journey to it, that a phone with an AI doctor app can be a lifesaver. And that was my hope is a little bit that this will be an industries or interesting solution. The downside of it a little bit was you have also the conflict of um, how are these services paid? So I also asked the questions. Okay, how do you charge a person who's living in a village somewhere in South America without connection to whatever financial systems and so on, and you provide your doctor app? And the answer was data, and that's what I don't like, what I haven't liked so much. So my hope is that they're going a little bit in a different direction. But yeah, I like your education point. I think that's a really important one. So my hope is a little bit that this whole healthcare thing and AI um, will skyrocket and help a lot to do more stuff in a broader reach, but also helping experts here in doctors and so on to do better decisions and so on. There are also a lot of
Yeah.
interesting um, um,
But even
things.
to your question, so your question is very telling because it's from people like you and me, and like I'll make some assumptions now about us, right? But we're clearly we've got different accents, but we're both white middle class men from a certain section of the world. We probably have
Yeah,
quite an overlap in like some elements of our background of working in the industry. Now, when we ask this question, you and I imagine in like industry columns in a diagram somewhere around things. That's a very particular way to view the world, right? And I love the
yeah,
fact that this whole space is going to solve problems in ways that don't make sense to us from categorization. So, like, maybe the demographic it's going to solve for is like people who like the color blue and are located at a certain altitude. Like, and that might be the segment that they help with, not
yeah,
healthcare or the other things. And what I love about the potential of AI is like, and the reason, so if I was asked to solve this problem with a bunch of smart consultants and things, we're going to come up with a human compromised answer because we've only got enough brain space to help advise on a way of working in an area like that. But when we feed
yeah.
all the things that we think into the models and we use the AI as part of it, we can provide a way more nuanced and complex answer to something than is constrained by things. So I think that'll be the interesting next step.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, so let's check. What did you face in the next 6 months? I mean, we are talking about AI the whole time already. It's in nearly every
The
part
cliche
of
is
the.
2025.
Mm, It's good. I mean, um, it is everywhere or nearly everywhere at the moment. I think I had only one podcast episode where over 1.5 hours nobody talked about AI. So I was at the end totally surprised about it. But it went completely in a different direction. I think it was Julie from Elements. I don't know if you know her, the CEO of Elements. Um, so your point in the next 6 months is how to make AI meaningful. So you in the preparation you mentioned also, okay, when we look on the Atlassian AI, there was a huge shift from paying $24 per user last year, or in the last 12 months, for having access to Rovo and paying additional for having access to Atlassian Intelligence to bam, now everything is included in the premium enterprise and standard licenses. Um, so how, what do you mean with making it meaningful?
So I think everyone's aware this stuff exists now, right? Whether or not they have access to it in certain contexts. I think about dynamics, and let's put aside Rovo and things for a second, but it's like so my wife and her sister are quite reluctant to use AI when I chat with them, but they're always like taking the mickey out of me with using ChatGPT for everything under the sun. And I find it very interesting when I can introduce scenarios where it's just startlingly obvious how it could be usable to them as normal people. Like, I don't think you and
Yeah,
I are normal people, Bjorn, right? We've discussed the like, we're at one end of the spectrum, being able to use the six tools in all sorts of
yeah,
funny ways, in a way that makes sense to us around things there. And I remember I was having a chat with my sister-in-law and one of her friends. We were planning a holiday last week, and I was just like, well, let's just send ChatGPT on a deep research mission to work out where we could all go on a holiday together around things. And they were like, you can do that
yeah,
with the thing? I was like, yeah. Just, and I think what was really nice as part of that interaction was working with people and going like it's not just a Google search. And I was feeding in like someone doesn't like cheese, another person wants this and to go for cycle rides in the morning, and we fed it in, and then we went off and did some other stuff for half an hour, and then it came back with a deep research report, and it was half wrong, but it was really amazing to see them get inspired. And I think both from like a personal perspective and in business contexts, I'm really interested and challenged about how we get similar sort of aha moments in our teams with things where people go like, oh, it's not about me searching for the Microsoft Word document I lost. It's about having something that's really meaningful for my job around things and doing that there. And I love when you see little glimpses of that in meetings with people. I had it another one 2 weeks ago where I showed someone how simple it was to bring the AI into backlog refinement, so they didn't have to go and find all the other stuff. But that like little magical sparkle when people are like, oh, like I didn't realize it did that. Like that's what I want to try and make something that is. I don't want to remove the magic. I don't want to codify something that's in the
Yeah.
default there, but I want to make it more reliable to how I can spark joy in that kind of Marie Kondo sort of way around AI.
It's interesting. I see, well, I would say nearly every week I learn something new at the moment, or I conquer a new workflow where I haven't thought about it. And I like your example with the travel and research for travel stuff and so on, because you can do it so good. You can describe your characters, your hobbies, what you like, what you don't like, and it should come up with a plan. And we all know the person who need to organize a family travel is always a person who ends up with searching hours and hours and having phone calls or chat messages or whatever. No, I don't want to go to this one and so on. So yeah, I had last week for me, I try at the moment to learn drums again. I played drums in school a little bit, just 6 months, not really in a band. And my classic midlife crisis, instead of buying an expensive car, is just I bought a drum kit and started with that. And I found a tool. As I played last week a little bit with Zuno AI, where you can create amazing songs with just a couple of words. And we created songs for all our closest friends. And we had some beverages together and started with that, just some attributes of the person, hobbies, and so on. And then you have a funny song. And then I found another tool where you can put every song on a song on it, and you get all the notes and marks what you need to playing every instrument out of it with AI. And I thought that's so amazing because it opens up um, the world of music to me much more. I have access to so many learning content now. I can learn now all my favorite songs instead of playing all the time the same groove. I just put my favorite songs in it and can start with that. And I think these are all these amazing examples where AI is for somebody meaningful. Um, I mean, we both take now examples in the private context, interesting wise. I'm sure we have tons of examples on the business context as well. So 12 months. So we had already the point that at the moment it's so super difficult to forecast the future, the next couple of months. And you said you plan to be in 1 year to have this system of work, a leading system of work through the leadership globally. I assume you mean Accenture leadership,
I
or
mean both, Bjorn. Although I feel very boring now. My three things are related. Maybe that's good or bad with things, but yeah, both is the
yeah,
answer. Yeah.
I, I really like it because it's as I understood it. So you mean leadership globally? Um, you mean the Accenture leadership, or just
I want to do it for everyone, Bjorn. I want to help people understand how to take these nebulous things and aspirations
okay?
as
So
actually liking this. Yeah.
you are the person with really small goals. No, I'm just joking. That's that's an amazing task. Do you have? I mean, you explained already a lot about how you do things. What are your experience and I mean, a big part is change. We discussed this a lot. How to motivate people for change, how to keep everybody under the same umbrella, but also that's good when they are not agreeing all the time and discussing stuff and so on. So do you have, and you said in the beginning you are not the planning person so much, or so you're not plan every step and so on. Do you have a plan for this or just a draft or somehow a foggy picture where I want to do this, and that to achieve this? Or is it, we will see, it's like a bike ride? You don't calculate every corner in it and so on.
Well, it's like I always describe when people asking for a metaphor of agility, I always talk about Google Maps, and it's like when you go on holiday, you put in your destination, but like
Yeah.
Google Maps is knowing that something's going to change on the way and having an approach that can tackle it versus you looking at the map and drawing the pen at the beginning. I feel like I have a lot of the aspiration around this when I've got a whiteboard on Confluence with things. I feel like whenever I try and tackle something like this, I'll always come back to the community in the end, even when I think I'm going to fix it myself at the beginning. And even in the past couple of weeks, as I've started to try and unpack this as a problem where we're going like, this stuff is amazing. Now, how do we make it doable for people? Um, I immediately have started to like find other people and then be like, oh, and we can work on it with you and things. And I met a colleague this morning, Daniel, who was like, he found me, he connected me, was like, oh, I want to do this thing around AI activation in an area. And I spoke to him about like a slice of this topic. And we immediately just worked out together that we should work together on it and do the things. And I think that that's probably what will be, that's my preparation or lack of preparation, is that I am always willing to defer to someone new around something and pick it up. And I think that that's what will happen with this. So like I've got a bit of a vision, and loads of other people have a vision as well. Um, I'm not the right person to finish that up with things, but I'm very happy to bring together people and see how we can all collaborate on it. Yeah.
Well, sounds really good. So one last question, a little bit aligned to it, because I heard over the time so many different answers. How do you measure success for yourself? So what is your point where you say, "Well, here I was successful. So my plan, or not my plan, my step-by-step approach and journey completely worked out. I'm the happiest person on earth at the moment." So, what is for you important KPI to take in the business world?
It's always a horrendous one, isn't it? One of my colleagues at Accenture, Howard Johnson, he declared that I'm the person that has most fun at the company. And I think that that is a really good KPI, and maybe not like necessarily that I feel I'm having the most fun, but if other people go, you look like you're having the most fun in this company of almost 1 million people, I think that's probably a really good aspiration to have. And yeah, so do you know, probably that, like, put aside all the others,
Yeah.
I think if people look at me and go like, you look like you're really enjoying what you're doing and engage with things, I think that's probably a really good thing. And the thing about setting good KPIs or OKRs with things is always that like debate around like, how do you tell with these nebulous things? But I think a really interesting indicator is whether other people vocalize that you look like you're having fun and doing something interesting. So if I was to measure one thing, like how many people per month tell me that I look like I'm having fun and doing something interesting, that would be the way that I measure it.
I'm really looking forward to see the dashboard at some point for this.
Yeah, like a fun score dashboard. Yeah.
Yeah, fun score dashboard. Kit, thank you very much. It was an amazing 90-minute chat. Uh, I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot of new stuff. So I noted down one amazing sentence. So it would be a waste of my time for not playing AI, or not playing or experimenting with AI um, in every week. I have the serious play stuff. I noted down the Rebel Ideas book. That sounds interesting for me as well. Um, where can people see you, meet you in person the next time or virtually?
Yes, I'm a relentless oversharer mainly on LinkedIn, so you can find me virtually on LinkedIn. If you are lucky enough to live in our lovely city of Mianjin, Brisbane, or be visiting, you can come to one of our community events. And I'm hoping to be at Atlassian Team Europe in Barcelona and if not, then in wherever they're holding it in Team 26, maybe in Anaheim. Yeah.
Perfect. Looking forward to then hopefully meet you in Barcelona. My way to Barcelona is much shorter as yours. So, Kit, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. I really loved the conversation. Um, I wish you an amazing evening now, and my working day starts. So,
Yeah, have a
thank you
good
so
one. I
much.
can tell you the future is good, Bjorn. The future is good.
Perfect. Thank you very much. It was really amazing. Have a great one.